Good morning. I'm Wendy Wirt, an environmental engineer with the Sanitation Districts of Los Angeles County, representing California Water Environmental Association in today's webinar, but I'll also provide examples of how the techniques of designing learner-focused sessions are practiced at my agency. Diane, Monica, and I will demonstrate communication strategies in today's webinar that will give you the tools to design learner-focused sessions. Today's webinar is divided into 3 segments. I will start off by setting the stage. Diane will provide tips for designing learner-focused education sessions, and Monica will close with opportunities to demonstrate these techniques on your projects April 8th through 12th at CWEA's annual conference in Palm Springs. Next. Next slide. Next slide.
Yep, hold on just a second. It's not clicking for me for some reason. There we go.
This is a safe space, and we want to know your thoughts. So please use the chat box to submit questions throughout the webinar. Our team will monitor the chat box during the webinar and may stop the presenter to engage in content-relevant questions. We will also have time at the end to address more questions. If we do not get to your question during the CWEA broadcast, they will follow up. The point is that your input is essential to the success of our program, so please participate. This image reminded me of a joke that my supervisor, Basil Hewitt, tells. How can you tell by looking at them if an engineer is outgoing? Outgoing engineers look at your shoes rather than their own when speaking. The joke goes to our point. Effective communication is challenging, but worth the effort. Next, yeah. Research demonstrates that participants learn by actively engaging in the information communicated. So we want to know about you. Who is joining the webinar today? Have you served as a speaker or a facilitator at CWEA events in the past? What makes you interested in this webinar? Think about a time when you gave a talk and you could tell that it resonated with attendees because there were many follow-up discussions after your education session and in the weeks following it. One of the most rewarding aspects of my career here at the Sanitation Districts is the opportunity to occasionally go out into the classroom and teach our hands-on science laboratory to Los Angeles County students. After the bell rings, I often have students in the lab discussing the results and asking questions. The program was designed by educators who knew that learning is an active process. So our hands-on laboratory is filled with activities, discussions, and opportunities for students to share their discoveries. Today's webinar is designed to help all of us consider ways to make CWEA's education sessions collaborative and interactive. Next. Next.
There's a... It's interesting. Sometimes it freezes, but anyway, there we go.
One essential portion of effective collaboration is agreeing on where we want to go. It's going to take work to get there, and we're not always going to agree on the best path, but it's essential that we know where we're going. Since 1927, the CWEA and our members have been protecting public health and the environment. Our mission is to increase the effectiveness of CWEA's water environment professionals through education, certification, and the promotion of sound policies. My agency, the Sanitation Districts, has a historic affiliation with CWEA. Our second chief engineer, A.M. Ron, was there at the start of the association. A tribute to Mr. Ron was written by the former Los Angeles County Supervisor John Anson Ford in 1968, and it's fitting for our purpose. He states, "It's a pleasure to go underground and find so much evidence of honesty, efficiency, and cooperation in public service. It comes as no surprise then that our missions are well aligned." So now that we recognize our common history, mission, and vision, what is the best way to increase the effectiveness of CWEA's water environment professionals? The core is education. We have all benefited from effective educational practices or we would not be here today. Think back to a teacher you had whose class was difficult, but you somehow found yourself engaged and even stimulated by the academic rigor. This teacher had developed learner-centric education sessions. In the same way that physical exercise makes us strong, learner-centric education sessions result in mental stimulation for the participants, which achieves our ultimate goal of learner-applied knowledge. So we're going to make the shift from the sage on the stage to the guide at the side. As we go through our program, I'll explain why it's important to use learner-centric techniques for education sessions and give specific examples that you too can use. California's environmental professionals are highly specialized technical experts. Diane's portion of today's webinar will include tips to help your technical knowledge resonate with participants. Monica will close with opportunities to demonstrate learner-centric education sessions on your projects and programs April 9th through 12th at CWEA's annual conference in Palm Springs. Learner-focused education sessions come in many forms, from day-long pre-conference workshops to curated topical sessions to entertaining networking events to classic individual talks to vendor fair technical briefs, and perhaps some of the most rewarding mentoring opportunities you will experience in your career. Feeling motivated? Monica will also share resources available, such as examples of winning proposals to get you off to a brilliant start. Our goal is to inform stakeholders so they become involved, solution-oriented, and to achieve our education sessions, we must be grounded on knowledge and understanding. CWEA's goal is to have participants apply the content learned in your education session back in the workplace. One workplace example for me was on our chloride compliance project. My role was to develop flow scenarios and interpret results from the groundwater surface water interaction model. Developing learner-centric education sessions on this project was challenging. We initially started by collaborating to promote sustainable regulations. However, the compliance standards established require investment. We then encouraged stakeholders to maximize the use of resources. Once the community valued recycled water as a resource, they wanted to reuse more of it. That sounded like an excellent outcome. However, we encountered barriers to reducing flow or discharge from the river. So it is challenging to develop clear, concise education sessions in a complex and changing regulatory environment. The approach that we selected was to develop a portfolio of alternatives, model the results, and document our findings. Using this approach, we were able to provide substantiated results to changing flow scenarios in a timely manner. The project was approved after 2 years of extensive public outreach. And you can stay on this slide. This is the one I meant. The sanitation districts is committed to providing transparent communication to our boards and the public. What matters are the ideas people take home, the change we make in their lives. They know that as technical experts, you have something important to share with them. Education session participants want to understand. This photo shows stakeholders at the Sanitation District's 17-acre freshwater Bixby marshland, located adjacent to our largest wastewater treatment plant. These are the neighbors in the community surrounding a facility that provides both primary and secondary treatment for approximately 260 million gallons of wastewater per day. The Sanitation Districts has discovered that having participants take action, such as by discussing their thoughts, is more effective than listening to us talk when we want participants to remember technical information. We welcome stakeholders to our facilities annually in all regions served and participate in learner-centric education programs. We invite reporters to our sessions, which results in positive press coverage, including agency endorsement by directors, staff, the public, and even children who have become some of our best advocates. Learning, next slide. Learning requires energy. It's not a passive process. For the sanitation districts, a story format works for us. There are many resources available on this topic. One that we use to design learner-centric education programs is Beyond Bullet Points, a book on visual storytelling and presentations by Cliff Atkinson. This has 3 acts, and it's a great way to set up your education session. Act 1 is to set up the story. Act 2 is to develop the action, and then Act 3 frames the resolution. There's also a book by Brad Henderson, a professor at UC Davis, called Document Algorithms that resonates with our engineers. Whatever reference you choose, a story structure helps technical experts craft learner-centric education sessions that all can benefit from. One effective feature is to develop key takeaways that are immediately applicable in the workplace. Designing learner-centric presentations requires resources and commitment. Our office reaches out to presenters early in the process in the same way that Diane, Monica, and I are reaching out to you today. Next. As water environment professionals, we have all produced extensive reports. Our decisions are data-driven. Our results are data-supported. We place supporting information, figures, and references into well-organized reports. Excellent documentation is essential to our success. There is a difference between reports and well-designed learner-focused education sessions. Should a well-written executive summary, such as an executive summary from a master facilities plan, be submitted as a CWEA proposal? When I transitioned from design into planning, I served on the Sanitation District's Clearwater Program Master Facilities Plan. Our mission was to identify and recommend a plan to meet the wastewater management needs of our joint outfall system through 2050. I served as an author on the hydrology, water quality, and outreach portions of the administrative draft. The associated documentation takes up an entire bookshelf. We have all attended sessions where detailed experts projected reports for a read-along. It is likely that we recall the experience, but not much of the content. Next. Reports are exhaustive, they're extensive, they're well-written, they emphasize accuracy, they document facts, and they communicate directly. Work on the Clearwater program required extensive documentation because the Sanitation District served as the technical lead for the Environmental Impact Report under CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act, and the Corps of Engineers served as the federal lead agency for the Environmental Impact Statement under NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act. NEPA requires identification of the environmentally preferred alternative. CEQA requires identification of the environmentally superior alternative. They sound the same, but there are differences. Under CEQA, if the no project alternative is identified, the EIR must also identify the environmentally superior alternative from among the other alternatives. In other words, an actual project needs to be identified. Under CEQA, the goal is to assist decision makers in considering project approval. Next slide. Most of you are probably very glad that I advanced the slide. You have just experienced less than 1 minute of a projected report, which is not a learner-focused education session. Learner-focused education sessions are engaging. They alternate between facts and stories. Session participants have input that they can contribute. We explain, we motivate, and we communicate clearly. A better approach could be, there were differences between state and federal regulations. One example is mitigation monitoring. In California, monitoring includes budgetary allocations. Specific challenges then were knowing what we had to say to be compliant, what we needed to say to be consistent, and the most effective way to say it so that our plan will assure a wastewater system that is protective of the public health and the environment through 2050 and beyond. Next, the takeaway here is that reports should be distributed. Documents often masquerade as education sessions. Documents do not need to be projected for a read-along. Next. Education sessions should be engaging. How have you engaged in a past learning experience? Learner-focused education sessions allow participants to analyze complex environmental issues through critical thinking, problem solving, and decision-making modules. My role on the Clearwater program provides a relevant example. Our team designed authentic, learner-focused education charrettes. They were genuine in that the sanitation district staff carefully analyzed input from community members. During one educational session, a student suggested an alternative that paralleled our existing outfalls. This alternative was evaluated and became the selected or preferred alternative. This option is currently the alignment that we are proceeding with. The outreach on the Clearwater program was extensive. More than 500 learner-focused education sessions were held with public officials, community leaders, civic and community groups, businesses, environmental organizations, news media, and sister agencies. Engaging educational sessions continue to contribute to the success of this program. Next. Reports convey information, but stories are the most effective communication tool we possess. Stories produce an experience in the participants of your learner-focused education sessions. So, in less than 1 minute, here's the story of how I became a CWEA mentor. Is it beneficial for water environment professionals to be in the news? As a public outreach person, I try to encourage media attention to the good work that we do, but the traditional answer is no. In 2004, the sanitation districts was a client. However, after this accident that resulted in 8 titanium plates in my body, I decided to transition from private consulting to public service. As I recovered from this major trauma, my priorities shifted from getting to giving. So I decided to contribute my skills to an agency that takes in waste, such as wastewater, solid waste, and now even stormwater, and converts it into resources, such as recycled water, recyclables, and energy, for the benefit of the communities we serve. My agency, the Sanitation Districts, was there at the start of CWEA, and it is my privilege to continue our legacy. Next. Blending information and stories results in effectively designed learner-focused education sessions. Facts and stories can be layered to produce both a relevant experience and provide skills and knowledge that participants can immediately apply in the workplace. Environmental engineers are independent, detail-oriented, and disciplined. Yet, as you see in this slide, Dave Greenwood, a colleague, friend, and CWEA past president, recognized that the one thing that CWEA professionals use more than anything else is other people's brains. Dave introduced me to The Lazy Leader's Guide to Outrageous Results by Cynthia D'Amour. A strategy from that book is to clearly identify our mission and then collaborate with others to leverage resources and achieve it. Having 10 people engaged and towards a shared goal will take us further than any of us can go on our own. Next. Who is the education session for? This photo shows participants at a discussion of California's sustainable future. Participants were interested in this important topic. California is in a state of emergency due to the drought, wildfires, and earthquakes. To address these concerns, we consulted with the experts. The sustainability panelists were credible. We had the head of the Division of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources, the executive director of the Council for Watershed Health, the executive officer of the State Lands Commission, the chief deputy director of the State Water Resources Control Board. The portion that you see in this slide is when the experts were introducing the technical topics. Although the topics are important, participants were not fully engaged. As the facilitator of this curated panel discussion, I included interactive strategies that make this event a success. A couple of those could be to hand out cards to participants to write down their questions, and then also developing questions and content in advance for each panelist so that the discussion is inclusive and interactive. You and I are not, next slide. You and I are not the heroes of our learner-focused sessions. The participants are. They do not need us, but our success depends on them. The sewer science program photographed here promotes stewardship and helps develop informed, knowledgeable, and responsible citizens. This hands-on lab provides students with a real application of science as they simulate, clean, and test wastewater. You will notice that as the facilitator, I am in the back of the classroom. Participants are telling me how they would solve Los Angeles's water environment issues. As technical experts, we welcome all ideas and then constructively provide boundary conditions in the form of water quality restrictions, permitting requirements, fiscal constraints, technical constraints, and technological constraints. The bottom line is that as technical water environment experts, we are needed to key up issues and to guide participants through case studies. Participants do not need us to solve all of the constraints. They will do the heavy lifting for us. Rather, our role is to provide viable, technically sound alternatives and collaborate on the solutions. Next slide. We are not the hero of our learner-focused sessions. The participants are. This event, titled General Managers Pioneer Recycled Water Use in Southern California, provides an example. The general manager of the Orange County Water District, Mike Marcus, transformed this event into a learner-focused education session by starting the program with an innovative look behind the scenes at the groundwater replenishment system. For decades, imported water from the Colorado River and the State Water Project has been relied upon. In recent years, there has been a reduction in imported water supplies due to reoccurring droughts, which leads to the need to secure new water sources. The Orange County Water District collaborated with the Sanitation District to meet this challenge through the groundwater replenishment system. The groundwater replenishment system takes highly treated sewer water and purifies it using a 3-step process. This system is a classic example of a situation where it can be challenging to make a topic interactive. How can we show groundwater augmentation? Demonstrations and discussions are a great way to show processes that may have access constraints. Mike Marcus's active introduction helped the participants engage, and the participants became the focus of this program. Next slide. As facilitators and curators, our role is to adjust to your participants, make the participants the focus of your education session, and to put them in the center. A few years ago, I collaborated with our chief to develop an interactive breakout session titled Leaders in the Engineering and Scientific Professions as part of the Los Angeles County Public Works Annual Leadership Conference. Fellow panelists shown in this slide include former Water Environment Federation President Jeanette Brown and current American Academy of Environmental Engineers and Scientists President-elect Kristen Mariko. The learner-focused forum encourages environmental professionals to take initiative. These interactive sessions continue to communicate the value of water environment professionals to regional leaders on an annual basis. These well-designed learner-focused sessions place the participants in the center of the discussion. Learner-focused education sessions recognize that well-informed stakeholders are fundamental to sustainable environmental practices. These sessions are designed to be engaging, transformative, and empowering. Next. Make it all about them. Remember, our success is dependent on them, not the other way around. We need our participants. The speaker is a mentor. Your participants will help you reach your objectives. At the sanitation districts, a major way we fulfill our mission is through education, engagement, and stewardship programs. These programs allow us to share our expertise with the community and develop positive relations with our customers. We can inspire bright young minds. Some may become water environment professionals, perhaps even future leaders here at the sanitation districts and at CWEA. Part of the idea is to help people understand what we do, and who we are in an interactive setting. Our agency recognized early that an effective way to get the word out is to invite interested parties in so they can experience our operations firsthand. Education sessions are provided to regulators, elected officials, agencies, educators, and the general public. Well-designed education sessions are effective communication tools for the sanitation districts because they share stories and focus on the participants. Next slide. So we're going to make the shift from the sage on the stage to the guide at the side. Historical attributes of success were technical competency and efficiency. We as water environment professionals still need these skills. However, now CWEA must support us as we add the ability to work in teams and communicate clearly in many media. Rapid changes require water professionals to take initiative and to produce something new and useful. Next. So the way we were taught in school, our education model was built on the Industrial Revolution. Experts have an idea, they share it with the audience, and then the audience has it. Next. Next slide. Experts decide what content the learner needs to know. Learning, unfortunately, is not a conduit. Implicit in this previous model is that learning is passive. Presenters talk and the audience listens. Experts first, the audience second. If knowledge can be handed to us, then all we have to do is receive it. Next. Unfortunately, a 1991 Berkeley study found that students only retain about 20% of the material from their lectures. 8 minutes into a lecture, only 15% of the students are paying attention. The lecture format is a poor method to promote thinking and retention. Make the switch from presenter-centric to learner-centric. We can't just pour information into learners' brains. Brains are not recording devices. Telling does not lead to learning. Doing leads to learning. Next. Next. Does providing information equal an education? If it did, just imagine how much money the state of California could save. The education budget for 2017-18 from all sources is about $183.3 billion, with a total per pupil spending of about $15,000 in 2017-18. Education then is an active process that warrants substantial investment. You may wonder why this image showing classical musicians at our Los Coyotes water reclamation plant is on the screen and what it has to do with education. It's a tip or a tool that we can use. The use of unusual images helps the learner remember technical content, or in this case, makes the water environment profession more accessible to a broader audience. Teams from the greatest international scavenger hunt in the world visited our facilities to take photos and videos. Opening our water reclamation plant to this publicity resulted in recognition of the good work water environmental professionals do. And you guys can look it up on social media at #ILookLikeAnEngineer. So moving on. Information then is data, facts, figures, and opinions. Keep in mind that elegant engineering solutions, scientific breakthroughs, and exceptional operational strategies will only have their full impact if we as presenters can design sessions that effectively communicate our ideas and engage our participants. Next. Learning then teaches skills, critical thinking, problem solving, and collaborative analysis. So a tip here is to plan time for discussion. Our attention span is about 10 minutes long, so partition your content. Ask a question and pair people together to share their thoughts. The takeaway here is that peer discussions are better than lectures for knowledge retention. Next slide. Learning is an active process, and it takes place in the working memory as the learner abstracts meaning and connects with existing knowledge, and then it becomes part of our long-term memory. Help participants share their stories. When thinking about the technical education session you are developing, what is an interactive question you can ask your attendees to participate in? The takeaway here is that having participants discuss your topic is more effective than allowing attendees to just listen to you talk. Next slide. Next slide. Learning is a process, not a product. Learning is a change in ourselves and our brains. Learning is not something that we can do to a participant. Make it relevant to the learner. Identify strategies to connect learner content to participant goals and key takeaways. The key takeaway here is that skills immediately applied in the workplace will be retained and lead to participant success. Next. Your brain is built to conserve energy. Learning is work. Evidence points to one singular conclusion. The one who does the work does the learning. So let's design interactive sessions. A tip here is to drop the jargon. Make your communication clean, clear, and concise. The takeaway here is that specialized jargon is better communicated through written reports. Education sessions should be easily understood. Learning is more like construction. Elements address the complete education continuum from awareness to action and help realize the fundamental goal of applied knowledge. These sessions are designed to increase the effectiveness of CWEA's water environment professionals. We have to actively construct our own meaning of the information. Information has to be worked with, questioned, tested, practiced, and applied. Your information is the raw material that participants will use to construct their own meaning. Allow participants to discuss and digest the information together with one another. Diane will now provide more tips for designing learner-focused education sessions. Diane?
Thank you, Wendy. I'm Diane Lee with West Yost Associates, and I'm happy to be doing this presentation today. I think we've all been to really great presentations, and I think we've all been to some where we've been, I like to say, killed by bullets. So we want to really engage our audience. Next slide, please. Which requires us to think about how the audience is learning and apply all the things that Wendy's been telling us this morning. That it is like construction, that the information you're giving them is the building blocks, and I'm going to give you some tips to show them. Next slide, please. But what's in it for me? So they really need to take that information that you've given them, and they need to apply it to their own work. They need to apply it to their own personal experiences, and then maybe even report back on what they've discussed or what they've thought about regarding that information. Next slide, please. So there are a number of tips and tricks that you can do differently in your sessions at the conference or the specialty conference to help your learners engage. And I'm going to go over some of these now. The first strategy is to poll the participants. There are lots of different ways to do this. I think that Post-it notes are really your friend here. I've been to sessions where they've asked questions about, think about your favorite, or excuse me, think about a hero of yours, whether that's a person you know or a celebrity, and write down 3 characteristics of why they're your hero. And then having people take that information and put it up on the wall. That allows them to move around the room. It already gets them thinking about the topic, which in this case was leadership. You can poll the participants in as easy as asking them a yes or no question. Another way to poll the participants is to prime them for the agenda or the topic. Sometimes you could put up the learning objectives for your session, and you can ask your audience to take a moment. I'd like you to review the learning objectives that are here on the screen and think about which one is most important to you. In doing that, now they are thinking about each one of those. They're getting ready to report out on why they think that's important. And then you can poll them. How many of you thought learning objective 1 was the most important? How many of you thought learning objective number 2 was? And they're engaged. They're engaged in seeing how many other people around the room have the same answer as I do, etc. Giving speaker feedback. So allowing time for the audience to ask you questions, to give you time to maybe even change the direction of what you're talking about to address their individual needs. But really this opportunity to stop about every 10 minutes and conduct one of these strategies is very important. A great one is the small group discussion. People don't always want to raise their hand and speak out about a project or about a topic or a concern they have regarding the information you're presenting. But if you ask them to just turn to the people next to them and have a discussion about the topic, that takes a lot of that pressure off. And then they can talk, they can hear that person's experience, relate their own. And then as a facilitator, after they've had this small group discussion, you can ask them, does anyone want to report out on what you thought the most important topics were? And now you've made them the presenter. And so I think this goes back to the person who does the work does the learning. So you've given them information, they've digested it, and now they've come back full circle to present out on the topics that you've given them. So using group exercises, similar to the group discussion, but maybe having them make pros and con lists or work on a scenario, etc. Next slide, please. Oh, I already told you about the sticky note thought collection. So having your participants put ideas on sticky notes and then grouping them together on the walls gets them up and around and looking at what other people are thinking in the room. Small group problem solving, again, you can give them an example, have them work through it, and then have them report back. Maybe not so much on the results, but what was the process that you went through, or what obstacles did you face in addressing this problem or solving it? Pre-topic quiz to predict results is a great way to engage your audience. So before you talk about a session, before you talk about a topic in a session, you might say, you know, here are the 3 answers that we got from the public regarding their concerns about the facility. Now, which one of these do you think was the most important? And so again, they're going to pick which one they think is the winner, and then you'll be able to reveal those results to them. So again, you've engaged them, they're waiting for that answer, they've invested something in it. Stories and anecdotes, I mean, Wendy did a great job presenting this to you. Really good stories there that connected with the audience. Being accessible, you know, going to the back of the classroom, a really great point. Walking around the room, not standing behind the podium, but being part of the discussion, especially when you're having those group exercises, to walk around, hear what people are saying. Using props and showing, not telling. Again, Wendy had a lot of pictures of people out there in the field going on tours. That is a great way to show and not tell and to have hands-on experiences with your learners. It's not always possible in the conference room or hotel setting, but bringing in a piece of equipment or having a prop that people can look at and touch and pass around can go a long way. Asking your audience questions, and then role-playing exercises. Next slide, please. So I think this is probably role-playing exercises is probably one of the most engaging audience participation strategies you can use. Many of you have probably been to other conferences, CWA conferences in the past where we've had these sessions, and you may have a group of people around the table and you're asking them to consider a one water solution for a community, and you would give each person at that table a role to play. You're a regulator, you're a community person, you're a farmer, you're a municipal agency. And you give them a solution, you allow them to take on that role and discuss how they would address the problem or meet the challenge that you define. And this allows people to really expand their thinking, to talk to other people about the perspectives that they bring. So these are all strategies that you can use to help engage your audience. And with that, I will be turning it back over to Monica to talk to you about submitting proposals.
So So thanks everyone for joining us today. I was looking at the participant list and I see a couple of you that have actually submitted a proposal, but I'm going to escape from this, and I just wanted to show you some live things on the internet right now that I've pulled up. So hopefully all of you that might be interested in submitting proposals to CWEA are aware that we currently have our annual conference, Call for Proposals site open, as well as the one for the P3S conference that will be happening in 2019. So please be aware that those are both open and opportunities for all of you to submit proposals on topics of interest. I was going to show you a little bit more on the annual conference one. We did quite a bit of work with the education program team, which is one of our conference committees, to really identify what topics we wanted to focus the conference on. And by doing that, we conducted interviews with a lot of GMs and other agency leaders in the Southern California area, and we narrowed down the information into a series of team challenge areas as well as practice challenge areas. So in this document, which you can reach from just clicking on this link right here in the Call for Proposals homepage, you can find all of those challenge areas. We've been doing this now for a couple of years where we're trying to focus our content on specific areas that our members and our attendees at the conference would be most interested in attending. So I just want to make sure everyone knew that that was available there. And the other thing I wanted to show you was we also have some examples of session titles, marketing descriptions, and learner outcomes that if you're kind of confused, like what are they looking for, these are some areas of examples that might be helpful to you. We also have a document that you can link to that shows more information about the content and the questions you're going to have to respond to in the Call for Proposals platform. We've now been using, and it's called Abstract Scorecard with the company Cadmium CD that we've been using to collect the proposal information. But this PDF actually at the end gives you screenshots of all the pages that you'll be asked to complete. So you'll know exactly what information you're going to have to gather up before you start putting in your information. So just to show you, hopefully I didn't clear this with John, but I think he's on our webinar today. But I wanted to show you his homepage once he had set it up and what it looks like. And he has submitted one proposal on fats, oils, and grease control through upstream treatment. And just to show you what he went through, it's very similar to the screenshots that you can find in the PDF. But he goes through and he provides information on who collaborated with him on the proposal, the various session presenters, if he's going to have presenters other than himself, additional information on the session that he's proposing. On the screen, it's the title. He's picking which of the challenge areas his topic fits in best with. He's telling us what level of session content the session will cover, which practice areas would be most interested in this topic, who the primary presenter would be, and then a session synopsis. So the session synopsis is not something that's shared anywhere with the attendees or in the marketing materials. It's really intended for the proposal reviewers to read to get a better idea of what he's thinking for his session. The marketing description, if this proposal is selected, will be what will show up on the website and in the conference app about this session. In addition, we ask all of our submitters to come up with 3 participant or learner outcomes that will indicate what the learner will be able to do following the session. So that's where we're really trying to get into applying the content back in the workplace. What would they be able to do with it? What would they be able to perform after the session? We have a screen where you get to select what participant engagement strategies you're thinking about for the session. I know this area can be a little bit challenging to some that might have not had experience designing interactive or engaging sessions that have that interactive element. It's hopefully the segment that Diane covered, it's really not intended to be intimidating or challenging, but it's just really think about it as breaking it down and how can we get the attendees to either do an exercise or talk more to each other so that they can hopefully get more out of the session. And then last but not least, the last element of the online call for proposals is just agreeing to what we ask for speakers, that if you're selected, you would complete your tasks, adhere to deadlines, participate in any speaker training opportunities, work with your track facilitator, pay a discounted speaker registration fee, so just so that you're aware of what we would be asking for from these speakers. Now, for the call for proposals for the P3S conference, it's done through the SurveyMonkey site. The questions are very similar to what we have for annual conference, and those are due by Friday, September 7th. The annual conference is a week earlier, and that's going to be due on Sunday, September 2nd. But if you need more information on the P3S conference and what we're seeking there, there's also a link on this home page that gets you to a PDF with a lot more information. And again, it also covers the topics that we're most interested in covering with sessions. So let me go back to the slides. And if anybody has any questions on any of the call for proposal process or what steps we may take, feel free to write your question in the chat box. So crafting your proposals. So my guidance to you would be to really start by reading all the information that you can find on the call for proposal site. And this tells you what we're looking for. The closer you're able to submit a proposal on what we're actually looking for and seeking, the more successful you will be in getting selected for that proposal process. And we are looking for different types of sessions, everything from a very interactive workshop that might be full day, half day, to technical sessions that would have interactivity woven throughout. We're also asking for our exhibitors to submit proposals on the Innovative Learning Center that will happen in the exhibit hall. And those are intended as shorter presentations, just 15 minutes with a 5-minute question and answer. New this year, we're really trying to also encourage people to think through what tours could we offer in the exhibit hall, where you as the facilitator of the tour prearranges stops at different exhibitor booths where they then give a little bit of information about their product or their services. So that's another opportunity as well. So the question may seem daunting, hopefully not, but where do you start? So I would recommend selecting a topic that fits within a challenge area that's closest to your heart, something that you're passionate about, something that perhaps your agency has found a way to solve that you feel would be helpful to others to know more about. So what challenge have you overcome, and how could you share that information with others? So as we went over just a bit ago on the learner outcomes, it's really important to think about what 3 things do you want your attendees to remember and be able to do following your session. So it's really best to narrow that down rather than having huge laundry lists. Really make it simple for yourself and the attendees and focus on just 3. So spots in your session for engagement, that's a little bit more of what Diane was covering earlier. Where could you break it down and chunk the content and then stop for a point for reflection or a small group discussion or use of post-it notes or voting or something? And that is something that we ask that you put in your proposal. I got a question. Thanks Megan, for routing that question from Michelle. Will you provide a copy of the PowerPoint presentation to the attendees, meaning the attendees of our webinar today? We certainly can. I wasn't sure if you meant attendees of the session that you might be proposing for. And then that answer would be we route that through the conference website and the conference app, and we always urge the presenters to share their PowerPoint so that people can benefit from them later. Yes. Hopefully I answered that. And sometimes it's interesting, I'm finding in the Zoom system that it gets a little locked up. So no, I didn't get permission to use this slide, but I always think dodgeball is a funny movie, so I put in. So also think through, who could you find to help you with your proposal? Who could you find to be a co-presenter? Because in this situation, we had 3 of us doing the session. Many people like a variety of personalities and voices when they come to sessions. But also think through who might be a good person to help answer any questions the attendees may have. Who's a resource that may not have time to fully develop a session, but you could ask just a, could you be there in case someone has a question that maybe I can't answer? So this is your team for the session. So we do have resources if you would like further information on this brain-based learning concept. And I'll show you its website. I had Jeff Hurt with Velvet Chainsaw Consulting about 2 years create some short speaker videos for us. And those are the ones that are listed in this top section. And they're all about 10 minutes in length, so I know people's time is precious. So you may only have 10 minutes. So maybe you, during a break, go, oh, I'm going to go back and learn a little bit more about the science of learning or creating stellar presentations. Those are there. And we also have some additional printed material resources. We will be doing a in-person speaker track facilitator training in Southern California this year. We don't have those dates quite identified yet, but be on the watch for those in case you would like more information there. And going back to my slides. So here's a time in case anyone had additional questions for us, or the call for proposals process, or a question specifically for Wendy or Diane. I don't know in the Zoom system if people can raise their hand. I know in some of the other systems, I can't say I know that. Megan, do you know if people can raise their hand? Oh, I have one. I have a question from Alec. Allow to talk. Okay, Alec, you're on. Of course, it looks like you're muted. Your hand is raised. Are you there, Alec?
He's demonstrating.
Oh, he's just demonstrating you can raise your hand. Awesome. Okay. Okay. I did see a question from Elba. Thanks for joining us. Where can I get a presentation from now, meaning for this presentation? We will certainly send it out to everyone that's participated. And when we send out the link for the recording of this, we'll also do a copy of the slides with that. I don't see any. So let's see if I can. Okay, I'm going to lower Alec's hand so we have no one else's hands raised. And Wendy, do you want to close us out today?
Sure. So what I wanted to say here is that there are a lot of opportunities with the California Water Environment Association, and remember that no matter how brilliant our findings and ideas are, elegant engineering solutions, scientific breakthroughs, and exceptional operational strategies will only have their full impact if we as speakers can design sessions that effectively communicate our ideas and engage participants. So there are many opportunities for us. Water environment professionals are brilliant, but we can do better if we engage our participants more fully.
If you end up having any questions that perhaps you didn't think of during the webinar today, feel free to reach out to me either by email or phone and just let me know how we can help. So thanks everyone for participating today. Thank you, Wendy and Diane, for being co-presenters with me today. Really appreciate your time and expertise.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.